everyone. Thank you for being here. Can you hear me? Okay. For 3 decades, Kirk Watson has been immersed in public policy spanning local and state government in Texas. He was elected our mayor the first time in 1997, and then in 2006 he was elected as in the Texas State Senate, where he served for over 13 years, leading on a wide range of issues which included education, healthcare, transportation, and government. And also government transparency, as well as courageously and successfully leading the effort in 2011 to establish our Dale Medical School at UT Austin. Since returning to the Austin Mayor's office in 2023, Mayor Watson has been a leader on addressing not only affordability, but also transportation, public safety, and homelessness. He has been married to his high school sweetheart and wife, Liz, since 1979, and has 2 grown sons and 2 adorable granddaughters. Help me welcome Mayor Watson, who has been described as a man with a vision of what the community wants and the moxie to carry it out.
Thank you, Robbie. And thank you all for having me here tonight. That quote that she just gave was a quote that came from Texas Monthly, and when I first read it, it said the vision wants, community wants, and the moxie to carry it out. But when I first read it, you know how sometimes you misread something, I thought it said the money to carry it out. And then I realized, well, all I got's moxie. I'm really excited to get to be here tonight. It's fun because I see so many people I've known forever and ever, and it means a lot to me to get the chance to come and talk to you all. And because I know this crowd so well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk real briefly about just a couple of things, kind of set a context for a few things that are going on at City Hall and around our city, and then I'm going to ask y'all to ask me questions, because I'd rather talk to you about what it is you want to talk about and not what I just want to give a speech. As much as I like the sound of my own voice, I'll shut up a little bit. Let me talk about a couple things. One is today's been, we were just talking a few minutes ago, today has been a highly emotional day. Now a lot of days I get high emotions, but today has been a particularly high emotional day because we had the press briefing where the detective that did unbelievable work in the yogurt shop murders walked everybody through all of the detail of that. And of course I'd had the opportunity to hear most of it already, and it's really very phenomenal what occurred. When you stop and think about it, this happened in December 6th of 1991 was when those little girls were killed. And then in 99, we really thought we had the folks that had done it, and even held a press conference very similar to what we did today. And we can talk in more detail about that if you all want. But now, and what the detective said today, he said it yesterday in a briefing I was listening to, but then he said it again today. He said this couldn't have happened except in 2025.
Right.
And that's because of the change in science and technology. It just phenomenal. And before this is over, I anticipate we're going to see that the guy that was named, he was actually named a little earlier, but that they were talking about today, Brasher's his name, that there will be other cold cases that I truly believe there will be other cold cases that he'll be implicated in. And the way this happened, just to give you just a little bit of an example, the gun, the only cartridge they found at the yogurt shop that night, there were 2 guns at least there that night, a .22 and a .38, and they found a cartridge of the .38 in the drain, because you remember he set the place on fire, and so the fire department had come in to put out a fire, and it washed this into the drain. that cartridge was for a very specific type of gun. And this detective who took over the matter in 2022, he had run it through, he decided to rerun it through ballistics again to see if it got any hits. And he got a hit on a case in Kentucky. And so he was able to, and he told an interesting story. The way the young girls were tied up was they were tied up with their own clothes here. And he said when they got on the phone with the detective in Kentucky, he just kind of off the cuff said, "Hey, were your victims tied up with their own clothes?" And he said it just gave him chills. I mean, but in any event, when they also got a match on DNA, which is a type of match, again, that probably you couldn't have done until very recently. When they got that match on DNA to a case in Georgia, they then decided, they thought we may have him. So now they needed to look to figure out if they could find anything that would tell them he was in Austin or near Austin at or near the time of December 6, 1991. And on December 8th, so less than 48 hours, because that happened at 11 o'clock at night, less than 48 hours after the yogurt shop, he was picked up at a checkpoint between El Paso and Las Cruces by a border agent who thought he was acting weird and ran the plates on the car, and it was a stolen vehicle. And when they arrested him, he had a bag, and the bag had that pistol in it. And so less than 48 hours, they had identified him, at least in Texas, and he had that pistol. Had a pistol that matched the cartridge the way so, and in any event, he was then arrested and went to prison for theft of a car and a felon with, because he had already been to prison, a felon with a weapon, but they gave the gun back to his dad. They gave the gun back to his dad. And ultimately, in 99, he ended up killing himself after an altercation. He was in Arkansas, and a police car saw a car parked in a motel. It did not have a license plate, and it had a broken back window, and that looked weird to the police officer. And they figured out it was stolen, and the guy held his family for a little while, like a hostage, and then let them go, and he killed himself again with the gun that he had in El Paso. So it's kind of there's a whole lot to this case, and so today's been an emotional day, and I'm really happy that we were able to, the family has some closure. I mean, we'll never do away with the horror of that, and you know, Liz and I have talked about it a couple of times, that the idea that these girls were in their teens, and so if you stop and you start doing the math of 34 years, what those families have missed out on. But anyway, that was a surprise that came up at the end of last week or earlier in the week, but that's the kind of thing that kind of keeps this job interesting and something new that seems to be happening every day. The other thing that I'll mention to you that I'm really pleased with, and I was talking a little bit earlier outside, is that on Friday we reached a tentative agreement with the firefighter union on a 4-year contract with our firefighters. One of the things I told y'all back when I was running to do this time, which I'm still not entirely sure why that happened, but here I am. But when I told you we were going to get contracts, long-term contracts with police, fire, and EMS, that we needed to stabilize public safety in this town. And I'm real pleased that, of course, we already have the contract with EMS. We got the police contract that a lot of people didn't think we'd be able to do. That contract, I actually pushed for a 5-year contract. Typically these long-term contracts are 3 or 4 years, but I badly wanted a 5-year contract because I wanted to send the message because we'd had such bad relationships, frankly, between City Hall and the police union. I wanted to send a strong message about 5 years instead of even just 4, right? And we got that. This is a 4-year contract. Like I say, it's a tentative agreement that was reached on Friday. The firefighter union will now vote on it, and after they vote on it, it'll come to city council, and I'm anticipating that that's all gonna work out pretty well. And then the third thing I'll say is that we have an election in November, and one of the things that's on the ballot for the election is a tax rate election for the city of Austin. And I'll talk more if y'all want to talk more about that, but the reason that I think that that's on the ballot and the reason that it's needed is because the growth of our city and the things like what I was just talking about, public safety, 100%, all of it, of the property tax revenue that's collected in the city of Austin goes to public safety. 100% goes to police, fire, EMS, and forensics. And if we didn't get proved how important forensics is, today we got proved how important it is. 70% of the sales tax revenue we collect goes to public safety. So 100% of property tax revenue and 70% of sales tax revenue goes all to public safety. What that does is that really limits what the city's able to do. It really limits what the city's able to do in other things, parks, libraries, public health. And it comes at an interesting time because following the pandemic, one of the things that the federal government did, and I think did right, was it provided money directly to cities. You didn't have to go through the state, which it went directly to cities like CDBG funds do. That ARPA money went directly to the cities, but that money's now gone. And what that did is in effect, it masked what the city was able to do with its property taxes during that period of time. And the city is limited to an increase in revenue to just 3.5% more than what you had in the previous year. Well, if you just think about what inflation has done, if you just think about the contract I just told you about, we have a tentative agreement on. That tentative agreement, the demand of the firefighters, and I probably shouldn't say demand, the request of the firefighters was at about 5% a year. Well, that's different than 3.5%, right? And so it even limits what we can do in terms of public safety. But the thing I think it most limits us on, at least from my perspective, is addressing the needs of people living homeless. And I candidly would have been okay with an increase, a tax rate election that just dealt with homelessness and fully funded our homeless plan. Because we really need to do that. But it's a legislative body, and we different things we decided to do, and I'm comfortable with everything we decided to do. But we need to do that in order to be able to fully fund the plan. And let me just quickly say about the homelessness. When I came in, one of the things I said is we needed to fix that program as well. Y'all can remember what it was like. And one of the big issues that I felt like we needed to address is we needed to have a homeless strategy office instead of having every department doing something. We needed to have a homeless strategy office that helped coordinate all that. Well, we did that, and we've seen big changes. But I also said we have to have a plan. We can't just be reactive all the time. And so what we did is we put together a plan, and we've been instituting that plan, and that's why we're having such success. But it's expensive, and you have to fully fund that plan. I'll give you an example. The outreach to people that are in camps, we have 2 people for that. Dallas and Denver both have like 20 people.
Yeah.
Our plan only plans for 12 people. And that's what would be fully funded. So my point being, we're not being extravagant when it comes to helping on the homelessness issue. But in my opinion, if the tax rate election fails, that's the area that I'm most concerned about. And I will say this, win or lose, I think what our city needs to do is institute a process where we do more what I'll call performance reviews of each department to make sure, if we don't win that, we're gonna have to do something like that in order to be able to fund next year's budget. If we do pass it, I kind of feel like that's a commitment to the taxpayers that we will do that sort of thing so that we're doing things in a smart and efficient way. And I've already started the process of getting that in place. Part of the way I've done that is last year in January, I made myself the chair of the Audit and Finance Committee, and we actually, that's how we worked on this tax rate election, this what's called the TRE. We created a policy that the city of Austin's never had, so that we would have it in place and could make sure we're doing it the right way. And that's what we will also do with regard to some putting into place. We use the Audit and Finance Committee as the jumping off point for what we can do with performance reviews and things like that. So those are just a few things that we're working on. Well, I will mention one last thing and I'll be quiet. I haven't really announced this yet, but I'm talking about it a lot, so I want you all to hear about it because we're starting the process. What I want to do, my term in office, I'm limited to 2 terms unless you file a petition. And I was just reelected, so the first term was a short term, second term was a 4-year term, and in order for me to run again, I'd have to file a petition. And what I tell people, my old friend, lawyer Timmy Wright sitting over there, he'll really understand what I'm saying here. If I file a petition with the city clerk to run for mayor again, Liz will file a petition in the state district court. This petition, my petition, will cost us all a little bit of money. Liz's petition will cost me all the money. So anyway, but the point being, when I leave office in January of 29, I want to have set Austin on the course to be the best place in America to be a kid. That is a highly aspirational goal, and I want it to focus on the kid. And I want to focus on 3 aspects of that. One is healthy kids, and that includes mental health in a way that I think we're in a different time when it comes to the mental health of our kids. And so healthy kids. Second pillar is safe kids. And that is everything you're thinking about, but I want to add the idea that what we need to do is we need to have kids in situations where they have what people are educating me, 3rd places, not just safe schools, although we get, let's face it, safe schools, not just safe at home, but have places to be where they can be learning. They don't have to be on their phone or they're on screen time. They have a sense of belonging and can be safe. And then the 3rd pillar are successful and happy kids. And that includes, in my mind, things like something as basic as learning manners, right? Learning how we talk to each other, or we should talk to each other. It means civil's the right word, and frankly, financial. Financial literacy. I don't mean necessarily having money, but I mean knowing how to deal with money and the kinds of things that make us successful. But I also want to focus on how do we happy children so that they'll be happy adults as well. I think if I want to set Austin on a path so that 25 years from now, it's a special place. By having the aspiration of being the best place in America to be a kid, we will achieve those kinds of things. So I feel very good about that. So now why don't I be quiet and let you all ask me questions? And old Tom's got another microphone. Dean, good to see you, sir. You have a question back there?
Hold on.
Oh, my voice is good now.
Well, people always say they can't hear us.
That's right. We need the microphone.
Thank you. Mayor Watson, with respect to homeless situation, how do you define success for homelessness? Are statistics being kept for the amount of people who are homeless?
Yeah.
Are they getting homes? Are they getting employed? Are they getting off of drugs?
Yeah.
How do you define success?
Well, it's essentially all those, so, everybody heard that, it's a question. It's essentially all those kinds of things. And so, we're having to approach it because of all those different things. And everybody, pretty much everybody comes at their needs in a different way. So when I came into office, one of the things I felt we were doing wrong was we were doing kind of an all or nothing approach. And that was what we called permanent supportive housing. And by the way, we need more permanent supportive housing. We're building more permanent supportive housing, and we're making a difference in that regard. I'm gonna come back to that. But that's not all you need. You have a lot of folks that, and this skews the numbers, but you have a lot of folks that may be, they need 1 month's payment on their rent, or they're gonna be homeless, but that 1 month's payment, they'll be back on track. So we don't have enough preventative types of activities, although we've instituted more of those. We don't have enough rapid rehousing, so that somebody that finds themselves homeless, a family finds themselves homeless, they have something where we can rapidly get them into some form of housing for a brief period of time while we find them a more permanent place to live, so that they don't end up on the street and then really spiral down. So, statistics across the board, more emergency shelters. For some reason, people didn't want, when I first came in, they fought me on emergency shelters, getting people off the street and getting them into the system so that we could then help them navigate to what they most needed. Yes, and in every one of those areas, we have statistics. Now, I've always felt like the folks that work in this as activists and advocates, and not all of them, that's a horrible generalization, but they talk too much in terms of ending homelessness. Well, I'm not gonna stand up in front of anybody and say we're gonna end homelessness, because somebody is going to have some issue along the way that creates a situation for them to be without a home. But across the board, we have to keep the statistics. What we know, for example, and we're gonna have a pretty good sized announcement come out, I can't remember, it may be next week, maybe the week after, where we show that our efforts are actually making a difference. The number of people we're actually putting into housing, and the number of people that are actually staying in housing, because one of the failures I thought we had with permanent supportive housing is we weren't providing enough of the wraparound services. Just because you give somebody a place to live, when they have certain problems, they may be back out on the street quickly. So we're now providing better services to keep people there. We actually, the report will say something that's kind of, I don't know what the right word is, but it's counterintuitive. One of the things that the report will say is that that we counted more people in the count. We counted more homeless people than we had in previous years. And so your first reaction is, oh, you're not fixing homelessness. Except that we had more people in shelters than we've had in previous years. Well, come to find out, it's easier to count people when they're all in a shelter than when they're out there in parks and places like that. Well, that's a good sign that we're making progress. So you're never going to define it as you've solved homelessness, you've ended homelessness. But we're going to, as long as we can keep getting these numbers down, and we have places for people to go, the number of 311 calls we get, that's another statistic that if I can reduce the number of 311 calls where somebody's complaining about a trashy situation or an encampment or fear, then so it's across the board, and I'm looking at it as a dashboard. Good question, thank you. Yes, back there, and then we'll come up here.
Yeah, the thing that is always concerning.
Put that mic up near your mouth.
The thing that concerns me about Austin is we have all these different taxes. For instance, right now, we have both AISD coming after some more increased taxes, and the same with the city. But really what's happened over the years, especially with Robin Hood, has been that more and more of our taxes have gone to the state. The state has substantially reduced how much they're putting into education, and it's also gone into rural areas where they gamed the system when we came in with Robin Hood, and essentially through a number of things reduced the amount
Right.
they had to come up with, and the cities have paid the rest. Now, which means that when we put a dollar through taxes to the schools, it takes us $100 to get $30, basically. Whereas with the county and the city, we get most of what, and at the same time, the state is taking from us as
Yeah.
part of the deal for the med school. We're giving $30 million a year, or $35 million, I think it is,
That's
to Dell, and there's very little that they're doing for that money, and it's basically going to the state. So if we took that 30 million, paid for transportation, which wouldn't count against us in AISD, AISD in effect would have what it would take them 100 million in taxes to get, and neither the city nor AISD would have to be asking for more money. It seems to me there's a number of other areas like that in.
Well, there are. So let me, if you don't mind, let me address, because you covered a pretty wide swath there, and so let me address a couple of things. The first thing that comes to my mind when you're talking is that you're right. When somebody receives their combined tax bill, it's not just the city of Austin, although you'd think on any given Thursday night it's all just the city of Austin, right? And in fact, the majority of property taxes that are collected by the school district. And you're also right that a majority of the money that's collected doesn't stay in the school district, it goes to the state of Texas. Don't get me started on how much I fought all of that while I was in the legislature, including, by the way, in 2019, working my way onto the conference committee for HB3, which was the school finance bill at that time. And I said at the time, we passed a pretty good bill. And I said at the time, if the state will continue to do what it's doing here, if it'll be disciplined and continue to put money into this system, this could work. Well, that didn't last a session, right, to the next session. So you're absolutely right about that. And that's one of the problems for a city, frankly, that has to provide the general services that people want so much, is that they hear their tax, they see their tax bill, and they immediately, instinctively are opposed to a tax increase when it may be paying for the public services they need, like police, fire, EMS, parks, libraries, those kinds of things, public health. So one of the things that we've looked at, and it's not easy at all, is the idea, to use your numbers, and I'll use your numbers, because they're, in my opinion, they're pretty close. But if a taxpayer in Austin has to pay $1 to AISD, and that dollar really is only worth a third to a half, well, that's not real good value on that dollar. So if there is something the city can do that the school district doesn't need to do, and Pat Forgione knows, we talked about this some time ago. What could happen is, if the city could pick that up, at least if you're taxing that taxpayer $1, at least they're getting 100 cents on the dollar. And you could provide that service. But you run into real legal problems. You run into real legal problems. One is what the city's allowed to pay for. The second is what the legislature feels like the school district ought to be paying for. And if the city steps in, and I've had these conversations, if the city steps in and takes that, then they're going to say, if the school district lowers the money, let's say that's what the school district does. They say we don't have to pay for parental support. Let's use that as an example. Let's say the city steps in and picks up $10 million of parental support. And the school district says, well, we'll reduce our taxes by $10 million so that the taxpayer gets a net wash. Well, that means that about $7 million, the state just lost $7 million.
Yeah.
And the state's gonna say, no, you don't get to cut our money when you do this. So let's say the second option happens and you reduce it 10 million, the school district reduces it 10 million. No, let's say we pick up 10 million and the school district says, well, I'll tell you what we'll do. We're not gonna reduce it by 10 million, but we'll take that money you've just freed up, that around 3 to 5 million, and we'll put it into purely educational activity, as opposed to the general services kind of thing the city's picking up. Well, that's great, except the taxpayer didn't get a break. So you see, it's not as easy as simply saying that's what we're gonna do. I will tell you this. We passed a resolution, the city council passed a resolution in August, I think. I may be wrong about that, but I think it was in August, where we've told the city manager to bring us back a list of the kinds of things I'm talking about right now, to see whether those are the kinds of things that we could do. In addition to that, I think that our jurisdictions, and this is harder than it sounds, I know it sounds easy, but our jurisdictions don't do as good a job as I would like for them to do in letting each other know what they're getting ready to do on tax rate.
Yeah.
I will tell you that last year when I supported the tax rate election for the county and when I supported the tax rate election for the AISD, I figured we were probably gonna have to go to the taxpayers for a vote this year. I mean, I knew what our budget looked like. I didn't expect the county to come in with a big tax increase, and they did this year. So there needs to be better communication one with the other. You had a question, sir?
Well, what is the turnover rate for the homeless to come in and, okay, what is the latest update on how many homeless people are in Austin but are revolving out? What's the percentage?
You know, I don't know the percentage of that. The number itself is, depends upon who you listen to, somewhere between 4,000 and 6,000 homeless. But the rotation, I don't know, and I need to ask that question. I just don't know the answer to that.
Well, I know there's a lot less people on the streets
Yeah.
that are homeless.
No, we're making real progress in that regard. And what the hope is, and what I believe is the case, is that we're getting them stabilized. And as we get them stabilized, it makes a difference in their ability to stay housed. Yes, sir.
Thank you for being here, Mayor.
My pleasure.
Anyway, as you know, I'm very interested in the environment and climate. Right now, the rest of the world is going gangbusters on solar and reducing their fossil fuel, but not in the U.S.
Right.
I think Austin Energy can do more than it's doing for distributed local solar. The CREZ lines are congested, we can't get the stuff from West Texas that we need, and they're shutting down wind turbines because they can't get the energy
Yeah.
to the municipal area. What can you do we have a plan, but it's not being fully implemented.
Yeah.
To get more rooftop solar. We've got thousands of warehouses with acres of rooftops just sitting in the sun all day long.
Yeah, the problem, you're right, and I'm gonna answer your question, but the pushback I'll give is that while there may be lots of rooftops that you can put it on, it still costs money.
I know.
And that becomes the issue, particularly when the federal government has, as you know, recently taken away the tax credits that would allow that to occur. So, that's our biggest problem. You've got at the federal level and at the state level, kind of a bias against wind and solar energy. But here's what here's the way we're approaching it. We have asked Austin Energy to come back to us with a plan for how we maximize it by putting rooftop solar on city buildings and public buildings.
Yes.
So that we're in a position where it'll cost us when we do that.
But save us.
But over time, it will save us money, and there's no question that it saves us money over time. The problem, of course, is that in order to do it right now, you gotta have the money right now. And that creates an impact on rates right now. But over time, we'll get that money back, and we need the extra capacity. Particularly with some of the with artificial intelligence and everything, all the data centers and all of that, and the businesses that want to come here, if we're going to serve them, we need to do that. That's number one, I would say. Number two is that while purchase of rooftop solar we've lost that tax break, I want to create a new program, and I'm working with Austin Energy, and I think probably in the next 2 weeks we'll launch the next steps of this, is how we do leasing. And we do so that people can actually lease the equipment they need for rooftop solar. And the key to that, the problem we've had to deal with there, and is that if you're leasing the equipment, somebody owns that equipment, right? Because you're leasing it from them. And the problem has been a technical legal problem about whether or not they're the ones that then own the electricity. And are you then buying the electricity from them as part of the lease? And you can't do that in Texas.
That's right.
So we've been trying to work, we think that the leasing industry has matured enough that we can learn from some other places. And what we're going to do is you're going to see us run like crazy through 2027 until that money runs out too, so that we can get depreciation and we can get some of the tax benefits off that. The point I'm trying to make is you're right, and we're working very hard, as you can tell. I'm thinking about a lot of these things. I'm actually going to probably go tomorrow. We have to make the decision. We have to kind of fish or cut bait tomorrow. About every 3 years, there's an international conference that Bloomberg does for mayors on climate. And they're doing it in conjunction with the big climate meeting in Brazil this year. And I've been invited, and I've been invited to speak, and I'm gonna have to decide, really tomorrow is the park it or drive it tomorrow. And I'm inclined to go. I want to go, but it's a long way to go to Brazil. So we're in Waco or something, anyway, I'll probably end up going to that, but it's because we're trying. I want to learn more and be able to be in position to do more. So thanks for that question. Yes.
Yeah, my question is about something that's totally different from anything that's been talked about tonight. But it's about all the cameras, and I know this is coming up again in the fall, very soon.
Yeah, I don't think it is, but that's all right.
Oh, okay, I had read.
For somebody, well, there's some people that spread a lot of information, but go
Okay.
ahead, ask your
I
question.
hope that's wrong. But all the cameras that are all over Austin, and most people probably in this room don't even know they're there.
Well, there's
I
one
see
looking
them.
at me right there. I haven't been on a camera all day until this. but-
I'm talking about on the streets
I know what you're talking
that
about.
are tracking your license plate number. And I'm very concerned about if we go back to that. And I'm very concerned right now, even though the city has voted not to fully implement it, they're out there. And I see them every day.
Well, but the
And
city's
so
not
are they working? And
Well,
are they,
but they're not city, they're made,
oh, they're owned by a private company owned
Well-
by a field.
okay, let me answer the question, because I worry that people are worried about this.
Yeah. A lot of people
And I do worry about that. I also worry about how in other places, things like license plate readers help in solving crimes.
I
And
think that's more rare than,
Well, I'm not sure it's rare, but it doesn't matter because we're not doing it.
yeah.
But for example, recently, y'all may remember there was a person that was involved in a couple of shootings in Austin and started off up northwest and by the end of the day was down by Circle C, right? Well, some people tell me that had we had license plate readers, we might have known that person, where that person was and where they were moving. And so it is meant to be a tool
Yeah.
to increase public safety. But I get that people are fearful or worried about that kind of
I'm
thing.
just worried about how it's gonna be used.
Well, of
If
course
we
you
were
are.
limited to that.
Sure, yeah, sure.
I'm
But-
good.
Yeah, well, and what she said, she's worried about how it'll be used.
Yeah.
But I don't think you're gonna see the city of Austin do anything, well, you're not, well, I'm doing what I'm doing, unless it is used in a positive way to protect you and not in a way that would hurt you. And that's why you haven't seen a vote on any of this.
And how do we know what that company?
Well, sure,
Is
and,
doing
and,
with
and you gotta make sure that you have those protections built in if you're dealing with a company. But here's the thing, as recently as last week, and this is not the way to fight against it, by the way, I'm not giving you advice on how to fight against it, but as recently as last week, what happened was, the way the Open Meetings Act works, and I know a little bit about that because I know who the author of the bill was. The way the Open Meetings Act works is it says that we're not allowed to have you come and talk to us about things, and our rules say that people can't come to City Hall and just talk about anything unless they sign up for general public communication. And we have a slot at noon every Thursday that we have a meeting that allows for 10 people to speak on anything they want to speak on. Well, we got word that people were signing up to speak on cameras in parks, and there weren't no cameras in parks on the agenda. And it was only during the meeting that I finally figured out what was going on, was somebody had signed up in public communication, general public communication, 2 people had signed up to speak in favor of cameras in parks. Well, the people that were opposed to cameras in parks chose to do it by coming in and signing up on other items, say a police item, and say, well, I'm all for putting money into the police, but let me tell you what I'm not for. And, which was out of order. And so I had to call them out of order on that. What they also did was they signed up under fake names.
Oh,
Which it seems strange to me that if you're there protesting, yeah, and you're right there on camera in a public meeting, but they signed up under fake names, including, by the way, one of the fake names was Anita Bong Hit. Anita Bong Hit. Okay, think about it. You're getting there. Sounds like a couple of people need a bong hit. And so I made fun of that. But that's not the way for us to have that discussion. But that wasn't even on the agenda. And I don't anticipate that will come back. If it comes back, it will be after having been vetted in such a way that it's meant to be protective and not to make it where people should have to worry about how that information is used and used against them.
Thank you, Mayor.
I'm glad you brought it up. Got a couple guys back there. I think it's this camera that makes me look fat.
Totally the camera.
It's gotta be the camera. That's another reason to be against those damn cameras.
That's right.
Yeah,
There
yeah.
you go.
You drop yours.
That's okay.
I believe that one of the biggest problems facing Texas in the next 10 years is that I don't believe anybody realizes how much more electric power
Yeah.
the state is going to need over the next 10 years.
Yeah.
If all these AI data centers go in, and the numbers that they say that they're going in, and the chips that are on the horizon are gonna have as much as 900 times as much heat generation capacity as the chips that are in use today.
Yeah.
That is a big power requirement for both to power the data centers and to cool the data centers. And then when you combine all of that with the problems that ERCOT has had in the past, and the problems that the state overall has had in the past, in the winter times, and I'm thinking back when we had the big freeze a few years
Please
ago.
don't bring that up. You were doing so good.
I have more faith in the city of Austin than I do in the
Yeah.
state or ERCOT. And I don't believe the state overall is gonna have enough power
Well,
to handle all
you have a valid concern. You have a valid concern. And in fact, there's a couple of, I'll just add a couple of things to make you worry a little more. Yeah, well, yeah, I'm not going to go there right now. But a couple things. One is, part of the difficulty we have in increasing generation at Austin Energy is not unique to Austin Energy. It is a statewide issue in terms of others increasing generation. And that is that the grid needs to be in a position that it can take all that extra generation. And ERCOT manages that grid. And so I worry about, even if you increase the generation, how you get it from one place to the other. And the second thing I'll say is that even if we wanted to increase it, we would need to increase it in our service area in such a way that we wouldn't have to pay congestion pricing. The word congestion comes up after my first point. We wouldn't have to pay congestion pricing to get it to where we want to get it. So you are rightfully concerned. So what we're looking at are things where you can do it right here, and you are otherwise grandfathered on congestion pricing. If we want this economy to continue to be we want our grandkids' economy to be this kind of economy, we have to build the infrastructure and be prepared to do it. Batteries will be a much bigger thing. Batteries we're able to put in places, hopefully, that are within our area, so that we don't have to pay congestion pricing, and we'll be able to utilize those when we need them. And you know, the two big winter storms that we can remember, you know, in the past 5 years, one of those was the statewide. Was statewide.
Oh, yeah.
That was not that. There was nothing. That was statewide.
Yeah, natural gas froze up.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And the second one was one of those weird storms that just kind of sat on us. And I could go into all the detail of that, but the improvements we've made to be more resilient in case of something like that cost some real money, but we just had to do it. I mean, there were places that didn't have generators that it just made no sense that they didn't have generators. It's something that simple. But you know, you're right to be concerned, and it concerns me, and that's, we're going to be as resilient and ready at Austin Energy as the state will allow us. Yes, sir.
My question is about transportation and the promises made at the, passing the bills to get the money out there for the transportation. The last bond issue that went through, I thought we were gonna have good transportation with, subways and stuff running out to the airport and the rest of it, and it died off real fast.
Well, I wouldn't say died off, but here's what I would say. I'd say two things. One is, I'm gonna start with the future. In 2020, I've done that, that's the second time today that I've referred to 2026 as either 2016 or 2006. I'm nostalgic. In November of 2026, we're gonna have a bond election. And that bond election will cover a variety of needs that the city has. And I have pushed very hard, and this council has been willing to do this, to not have a bond election every time you have a dadgum election. And I think we ought to be on a routine that is about once every 6 years. And I also think that routine, the way you do public finance on bonds, it ought to be that you have done planning on the front end so that when you pass it on November, whatever, of 2026, you can start the next day actually putting it into place, so that what you don't do is start the next day doing the planning. And then what happens is by the time you got the planning done, it now costs a whole lot more than you voted for. And you can't do it. When I came in, and I whined about this for years before I was in the mayor's office, because we were it felt like we were having a bond election every time you could hold an election. For example, in 2016, the city had a transportation bond election that was touted as the largest transportation bond election in the history of the city. Okay, I'm not sure that's a selling point, but it sure rallied people up, and they voted for it. But there was no planning for it. When I came into office, there was $1.8 billion of bond election money that hadn't gone out the door. And if you remember, we had a city manager. We terminated that city manager, and Jesus Garza came in to help for about 18 months, and he immediately created a capital improvement division to just push the money out the door. Now it's not gone as in the appropriate way, I might add. Yeah. But we're still over $1 billion, because that's how far behind on planning we were. But we're making real progress. You can't do it that way. Then what happens? What also has happened is that with the pandemic and with inflation, those kinds of things, they just naturally add. So you will see some projects, if you can do some of those transportation projects, you will see them appropriately reduced in size from time to time. But some, I think what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to have a list, and I've asked for this list of items that we will go back to the voters and say, you voted for $50 million for X. It now costs $125 million. We need to take that $50 million and either put it here and $50 million to cover it, or we need you to go to 125. And we're going to have to do that at some point with the voters, because you're not all wrong, right, on how some of that got handled. And so in 2026, you will see a far more specific process. You will see one that there's been planning on the front end. In fact, I met with our chief financial officer today, and in January, I can't remember what the date is, the end of January will be the first audit and finance committee meeting, and that's where we're going to start the process of leading up to the 2026 bond election. So really good question. Tibby?
Yeah, thank you, Kirk. I was sitting here in absolute amazement, wondering why in the name of thunder A bright man like Kirk Watson would spend his time fighting for the people of Austin, like he does. He's a brilliant man. He's answered questions beyond my comprehension. And I've known this person since he was a young lawyer. And he didn't do everything I ever told him to do as a lawyer, but he's done a very good job.
You see how
as
pinned back
mayor.
my ears are?
And I want you to know that he has everyone's spirit at heart. He is a man that will sit down and listen and talk to anybody about any issue. He has a very good reason, but we are so fortunate
Well, thank you, too.
to have a man like this that is fool enough to commit as many years as he has to your service. So whether you agree with him or not, we need to praise him and thank him.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I could tell Timmy Wright stories all night long. I appreciate you very much. Why don't we do one more question? Because I don't know about y'all, but I gotta go to bed at
What
some
can be
point.
done by the mayor, the city council, or the people to control the excessive expenditures of the city manager and members of the city council that are paid by the taxpayer as reported in the state's book?
Yeah, well, people are professionals and they're elected to those positions, and the city manager is hired as a professional, and I feel like everybody has got the message. So I don't think we're gonna need to worry about all that. You know, what he's referring to is an article where the manager he eats a salad at his desk. He's working at his desk, and he bought salads with city money. And you have some council members, and you know, they had me buy 9 lunches. You know, some days I don't get to eat lunch until 1:30 or 2 o'clock, and what's happened in every one of those instances, what happened was, I can almost guarantee, because I usually hand a credit card to somebody, but it's probably me running from one thing to another, and I said, well, somebody go get me a sandwich, or go get me a hamburger, or so, you know, something, get me a salad, and they would use they didn't have my credit card, and they would use a credit card. And, you know, we gotta use our discretion, and we have to be professional about it, and be smart at the same time. I would also say this: people work awful hard.
Yeah.
They work awfully hard, and if what they do, is they buy themselves a salad or a hamburger patty from across the street so that they can work the rest of their day at their desk. Everybody needs to be professional. Everybody needs to not overdo it. But you know, if that happens from time to time, I'd rather have them working than going and buying a 3 martini lunch. Now that I wouldn't pay for. I want to say thank you. I appreciate y'all very much. And here's the last thing I'll say to you. If you can't tell, I really do like this stuff. And I enjoy being your mayor. It's something I sometimes think I could be on a boat someplace, along the lines of what Tibby said. But ultimately, I really do love this city, and I love the people of this city, and y'all have been so good to me, and the other people in this city have been so good to me, that it really feels like a God's blessing that Liz and I landed in Austin, Texas in 1981 for 1 year. We thought we were going to I had a 1-year job with a federal judge, and we thought we'd end up back in North Texas, and here I am all these years later. And it's because of y'all. So God bless you. Be safe. Thank you all. Great to see you. Enjoy it.